everybody trying to make sense, heads or tails, of what's going on. One of the big sectors that is bracing for impact is Canada's auto sector. Let's bring in Hue Williams. He's a national spokesperson for the Canadian Automobile Dealers Association. He is in Toronto today. Hugh, thanks for taking the time for CTV.
Actually in Ottawa today, and it's an extraordinary day in Ottawa, extraordinary day for Canada and the auto sector. There's no doubt that these tariffs are bad for automotive consumers. They're bad for the auto industry, bad for car dealers, and they're bad for the economies on both sides of the border. I just want to emphasize that when Trump first tried to introduce these tariffs back in 2017, 2018, there was a united front in the States because American business understood how integrated our automotive economy is. And we've got to get back to the American auto sector talking to the White House, dealers talking to the White House, so that they know this is going to hurt their consumers and their economy even more than it will hurt ours.
Hey, I'm hearing from the big American automakers, Hugh, that they could, basically run out of steam in a week or two if this trade war continues in terms of trying to get cars manufactured. I mean, that the whole North American auto industry could seize up as a result of this. What are you hearing?
Yeah, that's definitely a concern, and I think the manufacturers in the States have signaled very strongly to the White House that that's the primary concern, that it will jam up the entire supply chain in the auto sector and basically bring things to a halt. Obviously, that impacts parts workers, that impacts the OEM manufacturers themselves, but all the spin-off jobs. In Canada and the U.S., you're looking at about 1 in every 7 jobs, depends on the auto industry, and this is really the best example of an own goal. Anything that jams up the economy and jams up the car industry is going to be bad for consumers overall. So we're hoping that reasonable heads prevail on this, particularly in the United States, understanding the ramifications of this, and that American voices start to come to the table to make it clear that this is just not the right way to go.
We've heard the president say quite clearly, we don't need the Canadians to make our cars. We can make them just fine here in the United States. I'm curious about whether you think we're now talking about the potential of, plant closings in Canada, massive layoffs in the auto sector in our country.
Well, the auto industry, it's a great question. The auto industry is so integrated that any damage is going to be done all through the U.S. and Canada, and of course on the Mexican side of the border. Longer term, I think it's important to recognize that the U.S. actually has a manufacturing surplus in the auto sector with Canada. They sell more cars here than we produce for them. And if you look at the the American market, the U.S. produces about 80% of the automotive sphere, with Mexico and Canada making up the other 20%. So it's actually a very fair and equitable sector. And the only reason we have a trade imbalance with the U.S., of course, as other guests and premiers and the Prime Minister has talked about today, is the large amount of energy that they buy from Canada. On the manufacturing side of the equation, there's just no scenario that Canada is somehow taking advantage of the U.S. It's a very balanced situation, actually in the U.S.'s favor.
Hue Williams joining us. He is the national spokesperson for the Canadian Automobile Dealers Association. Hugh, thanks for your time today.
Yeah, so appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
All right, and we're going to stay